Subodh, it's all yours.
Okay. Thanks, Krishna. This is a joint work with Divyanjali, who is pursuing her PhD at IIT Delhi. And like Krishna mentioned, this is yet another talk on release-acquire concurrency. And in this work, we propose a thread modeler abstract interpretation framework for analyzing RA concurrency, RA in short for release-acquire. So as you may have guessed, there will be a bit of overlap with the concepts from the previous talk. And I think I would be repeating them, and it's not necessarily bad because I think some of it would help reinforce these key ideas. So let me get started. Okay, so why is this? Okay, yeah, this is slow for some reason. Why is it not going forward? Okay.
I had it also in between briefly, but it was fine overall. I panicked for one or two instances, but it was fine overall. So I guess it should be fine, Subodh.
Okay, all right. So let me then start on a brief sort of a comment on memory consistency models. And many in the audience may already be familiar that many of these memory consistency models are key aspects that help rather define program execution semantics. And among them, sequential consistency is the simplest and one of the strongest specification for safety property. So under SC model, we all know there's a total order on all the operations across threads, which also happens to be consistent with the intra-thread program order. So in other words, the reasoning can, over SC programs can simply be viewed as an interleaving of operations from separate threads. Yeah, so so sequential consistency, while it offers a great intuitive model of parallelism, it is quite expensive to implement in hardware, and that's precisely a reason why there exist weaker models of parallelism which can provide higher performance, but then again they are much harder to reason with. So it's so there seems to be a constant sort of friction between performance and programmability with respect to these memory models. So on the one hand, weaker memory models provide you more performance. Programming such weak memory programs is going to be a challenge. So the focus of this talk is, is release acquire. And why is that the case? Because many in the community believe that RA semantics is sort of pitched favorably with respect to ease of programmability as well as performance. Okay, so this is not going forward. So, okay. So let me take a few minutes and reiterate some of the concepts that were already explained in the previous talk, but with a hint of more declarative mix into it. So, so essentially, so basically the intuitive but an incomplete explanation of release acquire memory model is as follows. So a program in an RA program, every read operation is an acquire operation, and an acquire read essentially means that any later operation in the program, operation in the program can be reordered above such an acquire read, or rather cannot be reordered above such an acquire read. Similarly, every write operation is a release write operation, and neither the compiler nor the hardware can reorder any earlier program ordered operation below such a release write. And similarly, this intuition can be extended to atomic updates, which are essentially acquire release. So a relatively more formal definition is what I'm going to present now, which is declarative in nature. It is based on two important constraints on admissible executions under RA semantics. So the first constraint is that every read is justified by a corresponding write, which essentially means that reads cannot read values which are produced out of thin air. So no out of thin air behaviors are admissible. And to realize this constraint, an irreflexive happens before relation is constructed on memory accesses, which is essentially a union, a transitive closure of program order, which is essentially sequence before, although there's a difference between sequence before and program order, but for our purposes, we'll consider them to be equivalent. Union with the reads from relation. And so the reads from relation is between writes and reads, the reads, the acquired reads that synchronize with release writes. And the second constraint, very important constraint, is that reads cannot observe overwritten values. So in this example, if I have two writes in some total order on this location X, shared location X, writing two different values, and then I have a subsequent read on location X, which is HB ordered with the later write, then this read cannot possibly be reading the older value V, right? So this is an important constraint that defines a consistent execution in RA model, consistent or an admissible execution under RA model. And a similar constraint can also be developed for atomic updates, read, modify, write updates. And in order to realize this second constraint, so basically one has to make sure a total order on the writes per location is maintained, which in the literature is termed as a modification order. So these orange edges in these examples, they essentially give you the modification order on the shared location X. So this modification order is only on the stores, on the writes of that location. Okay, and so once these two constraints are are realized, as a result, it gives you essentially this observation that you cannot have edge P and MO relations to be inconsistent with each other, which essentially means you can't have a program where two writes are MO ordered this way, but HB ordered the other way, right? So basically HB union MO plus should not lead to a cycle. So this is essentially a definition of a consistent execution, and this helps us then define behaviors that would otherwise not be seen, say in a model like sequential consistency. So here is an example where I have two threads. The first thread is performing a write to X followed by a read from Y. And then second thread is performing a write. And so in square brackets, I'm defining the values written as well as read. Yeah. So here under sequential consistency, you will not see this behavior. Perhaps under TSO and PSO, you can, with possible reorderings of read before write. But in SC, this is not possible. And in RA, through these constraints, you should be able to explain that this is a consistent execution. In forthcoming slides, we will see an example which cannot be explained by any amount of interleaving or reordering, right? So before we go further, let's look at some of the positive aspects of the release acquire memory model. So release acquire memory model has been provided with verified compilation schemes for x86 TSON power, which means that it's easier for adoption. In the starting slide, I had mentioned that in RA programs, the programmability is slightly higher than other weak memory models. So it's easier to develop programs in RA, and that's clearly a plus. Two very important observations regarding release acquire, which I believe are these two. There is a lack of global visibility of updates, which essentially means that if you have a program where a read has synchronized with a write, an acquire read has synchronized with a release write, this release write need not be visible to other reads coming from separate threads, which means that this old notion of a single monolithic shared memory abstraction is not pertinent to RA memory model anymore. So this lack of global visibility of updates is something very important to keep in mind. And the second is that these the stores prior to this synchronizing write would be visible
Did both get dropped off?
I was wondering if it was just me. Yeah, looks like.
So maybe some issue with his network.
Yeah.
Does anyone have his number? We can maybe call
Hello,
him.
am I audible?
Yeah.
Sorry, I think the internet connection here is slightly flaky.
Right.
Apologize for that. I did not realize and I kept on speaking. So if somebody can tell me until what point I hit off, that would be helpful.
Slide you were on, at least I lost audio, but then I thought maybe it was just me for a few seconds.
That was the end. At the end of that example that you showed, which was not SC. Sorry, no, maybe there was a slide after that, is it? I don't remember.
We can't see your screen.
Okay, just hold on. Sorry, I have to share my screen again. Is my screen visible now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So let me do this. Okay. So did I go over here to this slide?
Yes, you were on this slide.
You were on this side. Yeah. You were on this side. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, there are two important observations: lack of global visibility of updates, which means that between a synchronizing store and a synchronizing load, the other reads to the same shared location, need not be seeing the updated value of updated value V. They could be reading a stale value. So that's the lack of global visibility of updates. And the other important observation is that all prior writes or stores before the synchronizing store are also visible to the operations from this synchronizing load onwards, right? So these two observations are important because they allow one to create, thread modeler analysis. So RA programs are naturally amenable for this localized thread modeler analysis, and that is something that we would be exploring further in forthcoming slides. So what are the challenges with release acquire memory model? So you can still see some counterintuitive outcomes, which I had said before, which are not explainable via interleaving or reordering or interleaving plus reordering. So here is an example, which is a very classic example that you would find in papers on RA, independent read of independent writes. And these are the relations RF between this write and this read, and there's another RF edge between this write and this read. So there are 4 threads. And so the second read of thread 3 reading value 0 and this read X reading value 0, this behavior under such edges cannot be explained with interleaving or reorderings. And I will leave that as a it's a simple exercise. So if you have 30 seconds, you can figure it out. No amount of interleaving can give you this. This is precisely because in any total ordering, you would establish a total ordering between these two writes. And this example is an example that illustrates true concurrency where these writes are unordered. And that's why you can see 0, 0 on these two reads. The other challenge with RA model is that prior proposals for weak memory model analysis may not be applicable to RA model. For example, much of the work in the thread modeler landscape has been done by utilizing store buffers to model weak memory behaviors. A bunch of work from Antoine Mine and others. But they will not naturally carry over to RA semantics because Lahav and Vafiadis in their ICAL paper have shown that RA semantics cannot be modeled by store buffers. Other works by Kusano Wang and others that have been published in FSE a few years back, they are restrictive in the sense that
I think we again lost audio, Subodh.
Yes.
hello.
Yeah,
Am
yeah,
I
we lost you again, Subodh, briefly.
Oh Lord. Let me get back. Let me just move to a different connection altogether. I apologize for all of this. Just let me move to a different connection altogether. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are.
Okay. So I hope my screen is also
Yes.
visible.
Yeah.
Okay. So sorry about this. I think the network is unusually flaky today. And finally, this last challenge that Krishna spoke at length about, that control state and reachability is undecidable. So with all of these challenges and some interesting aspects about RA model, what is our objective? So we would like to create suitable abstractions or approximate abstractions so that sound verification techniques could be built for RA programs, specifically for user assertion violations. So that's with that objective, we have proposed a new abstract domain which captures the ordering dependencies among program instructions in addition to value abstractions. So traditionally in AI theory, value abstractions could be captured by known abstract domains such as interval abstraction or octagons. But to the best of our knowledge, these ordering dependencies were not a first-class feature of AI theory. So in our proposal, what we propose is that a new abstract domain that captures these ordering dependencies among instructions. And on top of this domain, which we call a PO domain, a partial order domain, we provide another layer of abstraction where we capture only the latest writes or latest stores per thread per location, and forget all older program ordered stores from that PO element or partially ordered element. And we'll see examples of what I mean by this upper approximation. Then what we do is, after augmenting this AI theory with PO domains, we plug it in with the thread modeler analysis framework and create a prototype abstract interpreter which analyzes each thread in isolation with certain environment assumptions. And we show that this prototype abstract interpreter that we have constructed on this theory appears to be effective not just in refutation, but also in verification of over approximate RA programs. So before I dive deep into or zoom in into the specifics of our methodology, let me just throw out the results right away. So we compared priori with the only other static analysis tool for RA programs, which is VBMC that Krishna spoke of. It's Krishna's work. And then again we also compared with other state-of-the-art explicit state model checkers, which are essentially runtime verifiers. So they are sound and complete under certain constraints for a fixed input and for programs that are acyclic. I don't want you to look at everything except that priori has been competitive on most of these. So our results are essentially split into two tables. The first table is for refutation purposes. So these benchmarks have bugs, and what I want to bring forth is the fact that priori is competitive on most benchmarks, and on some is significantly faster. The cross on the VBMC is, I think they do not support lock primitives. So I think that's why some of these benchmarks, we could not make it run under VBMC. On the other hand, for proof of correctness, we took a bunch of benchmarks where mutual exclusion has been implemented. And again, priori has been significantly faster than existing techniques. So I would just ask you to focus on some of these roles, right? And but not everything is hunky and dory with priori. So priori can also produce false alarms. So essentially, it will say that this program is buggy, although it was not. Right. So so while it did it in a flash of in an iFlash, VBMC was able to show no false alarms with almost 500 view switches. All right, so let me start with collecting semantics. Before I dive into the particulars of the methodology, are there any questions?
So Subodh, Deepak here. So
Yeah.
will you be telling us what is the analysis? I mean, what is the analysis you did? So this is an abstract interpretation. So
That's an abstract interpretation, which is thread modeler. That's all.
Okay, so you'll tell us more about that, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to get into the particulars of the technique now. So for collecting semantics, so my concrete program semantics, I am going to rely on modification orders. So this is the relation, which is a total order on writes per location, and this has been shown by Lahav and Vafiadis to be a sound over approximation of the RA program. So this can be so we chose this as our starting step. And let me start with examples. So here are two executions of an RA program. All you have to focus on is these modification order edges. So there are two threads, and these two executions of the program lead to two different modification orders. And the only thing different in these two modification orders is the ordering between B and E. So one could take these modification orders, a set of modification orders representing a set of executions, and combine them and represent them as a partial order, right? So this would be a partial order representation of these two linearly ordered modification orders. Now, in our collecting semantics, the collection of modification orders is essentially the set T. And how do I order these sets of modification orders? That is done by an ordering relation. We show in our paper that the set T and the ordering relation on the elements of T is essentially a poset. And the ordering relation, I'm not going to define formally here, but a high level intuition is essentially two elements, T1 and T2, are ordered. T1 is ordered with respect to T2. It means that T1 is going to have a larger number of executions that can be. So the set of executions corresponding to essentially T2 is larger than the set of executions corresponding to T1. So that's what essentially the ordering on this set means, right? So here I have two modification orders, T1. In T2, I have so basically all A, B, and C are partially ordered. Here, one could, see that the ordering between B and C is not there, but A is ordered before B and A is ordered before C. So essentially, in T2, there is a larger set of executions as opposed to the set of executions corresponding to T1. Moving on to the abstract semantics, the abstract semantics is captured by a set P, which is going to be a set of partial orders. So, elements of this sort, right? Where collection of modification orders are collectively represented by a set of partial orders. So we define a lattice, we define the abstract semantics by this set of partial orders. In addition to that, we define an ordering relation among the elements of that set with meet, join, and with join, meet, and other operators. And we show it to be a complete lattice. So the way we define the meet operator is two elements, two partial order elements are the meet of these two partial order elements would be an element which contains the orderings of P1 and P2 such that both are present in the combination. So if I take this example, say P1 is, so this is a Hasse diagram of a PO set. So imagine P1 is this and P2 is this, right? A is ordered above C and B is ordered above C. Then the meet of these two should have orderings of those elements which are common to both of them and present in both of them. The only element that is present in both of them is the operation C. And so rather, actually, it's not common, it's not an intersection. So you essentially take AC as well as BC, right? So it's essentially a union of all those. The join is the common orderings of essentially P1 and P2 on common elements which are present in the combination. So the common element which is present in both of these partial orders is C. And the common orderings on this common element are not common to both P1 and P2. So there are no other orderings that need to be preserved except the element C itself. So that would be the join of P1 and P2. So this is how we have defined these two operators. And we show in our paper that these operators define the, the LUB and GLB of any two elements of P respectively. One thing that I want to point out here is that creating the elements of this lattice P requires some caution because we create these elements on the fly as and when we go through, as and when we symbolically analyze the program. And we add elements, we augment these partial order elements. So we have to be cautious that while augmenting, the acyclic property of these partial order elements is not broken, right? So we have checks for that. And we have to also make sure that in a single partial order element, conflicting pairs are not added, which essentially breaks the acyclicity property. Moving further, we define transfer functions. And these transfer functions are for, so the ones that we have defined for in the paper are for store, load, and RMW, and even for fence and lock operations. But in the interest of time, I'm just going to talk about the store transfer function. So for a store where a value V is assigned to X, what we do is at a location L, at a location labeled L, what we do is we update the memory map of X having the value V. And what we do is we augment the label L in the modification order of X so long as it's a valid extension. So this operator essentially is a valid extension check, which is essentially checking for the acyclicity, that the acyclicity constraint is not broken. What we do further is this funny operator that you see is essentially a join, instruction-wise join of states that is maintained at a control location L. So what we do is once we have constructed a new partial ordered state along with the memory state, we will take join of the memory states if two states have the same memory value, have the same memory state. So essentially my program state consists of two parts, a memory state and a partial order state. So what I'll do is this join is an instruction-wise combination where memory state of two program states will be combined, will be joined if their partial ordered component is the same. And similarly, the modification order of two states would be joined if the memory state component is the same. So this is essentially what this funny operator is telling us. Similarly, this is how we'll describe the transfer functions for load and RMW. I may not be able to talk about all of the transfer functions here, so I invite you to read the paper. But after having defined the transfer functions, we show that the POSET and the lattice over partial order elements, there exists a Galois connection, which means we are able to describe or rather define two monotone functions, alpha and gamma. Alpha from the poset to the abstract lattice and gamma from the abstract lattice back to the poset, such that the primary definition of this Galois connection holds, which is gamma of alpha of some element A in T is ordered above A in the concrete lattice, in the concrete poset. So that's our first result. And then what we do is, so note that this partial order representation of a set of modification orders is only a representation change. So what we have done is taken a collection of total orders and represented it as a partial order. Our actual abstraction happens in this upper approximation, where what we do is we take the elements in the P lattice and look at each element and forget all and delete all the SB ordered or the program ordered older writes of a particular shared memory location, right? So here is an example, a very simple example, 2 threads. The first thread is writing to X in subsequent instructions, and the other thread is just reading it. So if I construct the partial order element at location C, I would have this partial order element that A has happened before B. And similarly at D, I would have the same element. So these are the 2 elements. I mean, this is actually 1 element, but at 2 different control locations that I've maintained in my abstract lattice. Now, my upper approximation would essentially take all the older SB ordered writes and forget them. So essentially, after applying this upper approximation, I'll get an abstract state which maintains only B. So the key advantage here is twofold. So A, my size of the partial order element in the partial order component, the PO part of the program state reduces. The size of the PO is reducing. And the second advantage that I get is that in few cases, I may also be able to reduce the number of states. So this is not a good example that shows many different states when upper approximation is applied, mapped to the same abstract state. So that's not happening here, but in our experiments, we did see examples where state reduction was also happening. And with respect to this upper approximation, we also show that this upper approximation function is a sound abstraction of arithmetics. So what do? We take all of these aspects and fit it in our thread modular analysis framework. So it looks like I am already over time. The entire idea of thread modular analysis framework is to isolate, to basically analyze threads in isolation, one at a time, by keeping an environment of the other threads in the system. So if I were to analyze this same example as before, I'll start analyzing thread 1 and 2 separately, with thread 1's environment being empty and thread 2's environment being empty too. So by the time I have done the first iteration, I would have computed for the first thread, the PO of location X having a single element A, PO on location Y having a single element B, and the value of X and Y is just 1, 1. So I could replace these values of shared variables by an abstract domain such as intervals or octagons, right? I would do that for thread 1 also. And because these are read operations, the PO elements would be empty and nothing would be, no information would be existing, right? Because the environment of thread T2 is empty. But after the first iteration, the environment of T2 is not empty because now I have an interfering write with its state, which captures all the effects of this program. So in a sense, what Krishna was saying earlier, you analyze the program in a sequentially consistent manner and figure out at interfaces what are the effects. So something similar is happening here as well. And then what you do is you apply this interfering write take the entire state and carry it over to the write, to the read. So you apply the effects of the environment by carrying over the entire state of the interfering write. And that's how you get the value in R1, the value of y in R1. So we keep doing this until we reach a fixed point. And once the fixed point is reached, we can then figure out whether the assertion property is valid or not. We don't need to reach fixed point if in some intermediate step, we have figured out a violation to a user assertion. So let me just conclude with some key, with some ideas going forward. There are some rights in my partial order elements that I maintain, which are critical. How do I find the criticality of, how do I find such critical rights is a question. And of course, we get some false alarms. Is there any way to essentially reduce this false alarm rate by either exploring counterexample guided refinement and other techniques? Other directions that we would want to explore is, could this, because these partial order domains are fairly generic in their applicability, could they be applied to other memory models such as RA plus non-atomics, so that richer properties in the concurrency landscape could be looked at, for example, data races or linearizability violations and so on and so forth. So with that, I would conclude, and I'm sorry I have gone way over time. So if there are, it's fine if Krishna, do you want questions to be asked later on after the session ends? That's also fine with me.
Well, I mean, given that you had two disconnections in between, that's why I didn't want to interrupt in between, actually. Yeah, so maybe a quick question.
I have a question. Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
I don't see, I may have missed, where is widening operator?
Yeah. So we have defined a widening operator, and that actually guarantees the termination for our analysis. It's just that I have not spoken about it because in the interest of time. So for the widening operator, what we have done is we have, if we see an event generated time and again from an instruction, possibly within a loop, what we do is in the partial order element, we just maintain its first occurrence and remove all further occurrences. So that keeps our partial order element finite. And we have shown that this widening operator, in a sense, is So what we have shown is that this widening operator could be applied to any monotone function f, and any infinite ascending chain could be made to stabilize. So because of the definition of our widening operator. Sorry, I've not included it in my slides because I thought that I may not be able to fit it here. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay,
so do we have any more questions?
One quick question, if time allows. If I recall correctly, you mentioned that this SB is different from PO. Can you comment? How this SB, or what exactly is this SB that you are using in your slides?
Right. So sequence before is a terminology that came out of C11 standard, where the order of expression evaluation is not guaranteed, is not specified. So while you have just a single thread and two instructions, atomic instructions, there would be a strict program order between them. But if one of the instruction is involving multiple sub-expressions, then their order of evaluation is, because it is not specified, you have to essentially rely on a stronger sequencing relation, which is called sequence before. You have to figure out at the time of evaluation, which particular expression has happened before the next instruction itself. So in that sense, SB is mildly different from program ordered, but because the assumptions that I made, I am only working with atomic instructions. So for all practical purposes, SB reduces, or rather program order reduces to SB in my case.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you, Subodh. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Krishna.